classes, social slime, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear, fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one leaves countries, lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. This is Game On. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. You're listening to the show on UCY.TV. Bookmark it and be here lots because I've been on different radio networks in the past and UCY.TV is as good as I've found. And I'm very happy to be here. And what we need is we need the listeners to be out promoting UCY.TV. A lot of really good hosts on here, a lot of really good information. Most of the other networks are pretty much full of disinfo, new age nonsense. And if we're going to change things, we're going to have to deal in reality only. All this stuff that they fire out at people is to people are frustrated, they're bummed out, they're indebted, they're beginning to realize that everything they thought they knew is based on a lie, and so they're easy pickings, for the new age groups and that, just be happy, don't get angry, just be happy. I hear that a lot from people. I just want to be positive. I don't want to get involved. I just want to be positive. I want to go save a turtle. That's what I want to do. I mean, that really bums me out because it's so freaking ridiculous. Anyways, Tuesday, I was talking about the IBOL, which is a bunch of nutcase scientists who want to barcode they're not quite sure how many species are on the planet. According to their site, there's somewhere between 10 and 100 million. This is the same type of scientific body that told you that they can tell the weather is going to be 2, 3, 4 degrees difference 100 years from now. Okay. Sometimes people, when I tell people how much use I have for science, sometimes people say to me, what, you don't believe the scientists? Well, no, I don't. And I'll tell you why tonight. We're gonna venture on over to the Rockefeller Foundation. This is stuff we were never taught in school, but then why would we? Outfits like the Rockefeller Foundation sponsored the schools. That's where your education comes from. It's a completely controlled education. Carnegie, he had a book there. I forget exactly what the exact name of it is. It was How to Win Friends and Influence People or something. It's the same thing. Another tax-exempt foundation, or the Ford, or as Henry Ford said, money It's not the money. It's what it represents. What it represents is control. And the Ford Foundation is another tax-exempt foundation. And if you're not aware of it, you should go and check out the Reese Commission um, with Norman Dodd. It is on my blog. You can pick it up there quite easily. It's CanadianTruths.wordpress.com. Just put in Reese Commission or Norman Dodd, likely would be the best way to find that in the search engine there. And give that a listen, because it was all about control from these tax-exempt foundations, and that's what the Reese Commission was about, is to delve into what are these guys up to. And one of the guys from the Ford Foundation said, well, you don't need to do all that work. You could have just asked me. What we're up to is Sovietizing America, the Sovietization of America. And somehow the folks in America never noticed this till now. It's all about control, okay? And they've been at it a long, long time. So anyways, I'm just going to have some fun. I'm going to take it easy on myself tonight. And I'm going to run through here. If you go to Rockefeller100.org, you find the history of 100 years of the Rockefeller Foundation. And that's a long time for these guys to be doing that much influence. So 1892 to 1913, they have a thing here. I'm not going to worry about that one right now. Precursors to the New Philanthropy. And 1913 to 1928, Finding a Footing. And from 28 to 63, The Advancement of Knowledge. And from 63 to 88, An Ecological Web of Giving. And 1988 to 2013, Catalyst Collaborator Convener. But I'm gonna jump over to Finding a Footing, 1913 to 1928. If this doesn't give people an understanding of how controlled your life is and how it's controlled, I don't know what will. So I mean, the beauty of these foundations is that because they're philanthropists, right? They the media gives them the idea, gives people the idea that these are really good people who just want to fork out their wealth to help mankind. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's the green curtain, if you will. It's the man behind the curtain pulling the levers. Okay, and it's that duality crap again. Okay, the evil pretending to be good, and the good being too stupid to understand and see the evil. Right? That's how we got into this mess. So I'm just going to go through some of this stuff tonight. We've only got an hour, but I really want to encourage people to spend some time, in these foundations. And I mean, there's so many foundations now, it's nuts. But those were the original three on this side of the water, the big three anyways. And but this is just the history of the Rockefeller Foundation. But if you get into the Rockefeller Foundation, their main site, and poke around in there, it will give you a better understanding of why what is happening around you is happening. Anyways, we're going to go through this. This is the Finding a Footing. Okay, the Rockefeller Foundation was chartered in New York State on May 14th, 1913. Okay? 1913 is the same year the Fed was created. And on May 22nd, the trustees held their first meeting. During the next 20 years, the Rockefeller Foundation was constantly experimenting with new program areas and new methods of working. Although Frederick T. Gates had proposed the concept of wholesale as opposed to retail giving as early as 1901. His idea was only an inspiration, not a blueprint. Building an enterprise that would run like a business corporation was almost unprecedented on this massive scale. Now, I looked into Frederick T. Gates a long time ago when I was searching out the Gates Foundation and what Bill is up to, and thinking that these guys might be related. They're not that I can find out anyways, although I did find out Bill Gates' father was huge in the beginning stages of Planned Parenthood. And so now the son, Bill Gates, is out there whacking everybody around the planet with poison vaccines, okay? And it's all about population control. Anyways, and that comes out of the Rockefeller Foundation as well. Anyways, on this page, I'm just going to put this down here. You can go through it with me. There's lots to learn, and you're not going to learn it watching TV, and you're not going to learn it, you really need to do your own research and your own reading. It's important. I'm on Facebook, but I hate the thing with a passion. Nobody wants to read anything over there. All I want to do is make up these little mimes, of which I'm guilty. I've made my fair share of them as well. But if I put a document into Facebook, I'll get very few hits on it. If I make up a mime and write something on the picture, I get all kinds of hits, and it gets passed around all over the place to people, and that's really worrisome to me, because that shows the lack of concentration that people have. Okay, they're like little children. You show them a picture with some few words on it, not too many. Don't make it too deep, and you'll get a gazillion likes. Give them something that they need to read, and it's almost like a lost cause. Anyways, where was I here? Okay, so here's this is. What year is this? This is March the 9th, 1910. This is a bill, I guess, to start the foundation. Anyways, from the outset, the foundation's ambitions were huge. As Gates put, these funds should be so large that to become a trustee of one of them would make a man at once a public character. A handful of similar charitable trusts had been established before the Rockefeller Foundation, most notably the Russell Sage Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation. But several things placed Rockefeller Foundation in a class by itself. First was the sheer amount of money, $100 million in the first year, 82.8 million in 1919, billions of dollars in today's term. So what they were doing is basically these tax-exempt trusts work real easy like this. They make a pile of money in oil or banking or whatever they're making their money in, and they don't want to pay taxes on it. Okay, so they put it into a tax-exempt foundation. So they take their profits and they dump it into the foundation. And then the money the interest that the money in the foundation generates is what's being used to buy influence. Okay? So they have this steady stream of cash, large amounts of cash, that they got to get rid of. Now, if they take it out of the foundation, they got to pay tax on it. If they gift it, they don't have to pay tax on it. But this philanthropy thing is them giving away money. No. They're giving money to groups who will do their bidding. If you're not doing their bidding, you ain't getting any money. It's that simple. And that's why science is so corrupted. anyways, flexibility also set the Rockefeller Foundation apart from other charitable trusts. Unlike the earlier Rockefeller philanthropies, its purpose was not specialized, but rather to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. What that could mean was left to its trustees and officers to determine. Rockefeller never attended a single meeting of the board, aimed to avoid too great an influence by the dead hand of a founder. Recognize that each generation would be best judge of the needs and methods during its own time. So they start out by responding to crisis. These guys know exactly what they're up to. Okay, they're not stupid people. They're evil as hell, but they're certainly not stupid. Okay, they were raking in huge amounts of cash, didn't know what to do with it, and they thought, well, we got all this money, why don't we just take over the world? And that's exactly what they've done. They run the world. Anyways, the foundation did settle on two main fields of endeavor in its early period: public health and medical education. Now, public health, the Rockefeller Foundation funded the first health in Ontario, the first public health in Ontario. They're also noted that they funded Tommy Douglas, who is a Canadian hero. Is really just a Rockefeller boy. And medical education. So you're pumping money into public health and medical education in order to control or at least influence heavily. But the road these twin commitments was not entirely smooth, especially in its first 4 years. It made gifts to such a wide range of institutions and causes that there seemed to be little unifying theme. That's what you call chumming the waters. Okay, trying to bring the fish in. You're not exactly sure what kind of fish you're looking for, but you just throw it out there and see what you catch. And then what you're going to do with what you catch. You're going to keep it and eat it, or are you going to throw it back? So that's basically how they started this out. Almost immediately, World War I pressed the foundation into service as a relief organization. Well, we know where the wars came from. Okay, the rich men, the bankers, the royalty start the wars, and they profit from it. But it's sold in the media that these guys are philanthropists helping helping the war effort. They're helping the war effort, all right. They started it, made a fortune on the armaments, and then turned around and made a fortune rebuilding the place. Anyways, in total, the foundation spent $22.5 million on war relief work, more than any other single entity. Oh, aren't they heroes? Including the federal government. Wow. Now we have a private trust fund who spends more than the federal government. Who's got influence over who? War work was quite different from the rationale scientific approach to addressing the root causes of social ills that the Rockefeller Foundation had intended to undertake. It demanded immediate response and direct aid. From 1913 to 1917, the Rockefeller Foundation underwrote support for Belgian refugees, purchased and shipped food and supplies, and trained medical personnel to work at the front. When the United States entered the war in 1917, the Rockefeller Foundation dissolved its own War Relief Commission, and from that point forward channeled its war relief funds through the Red Cross. Now, if you look into the Red Cross, you'll find a story there as well. International object lessons. The Foundation's war work, however, was not entirely divorced from its central interest. One of its first actions was to establish the International Health Commission, better known today as the WHO. Subsequently, International Health Division in 1913 under the direction of Wycliffe Rose, who had successfully directed the Rockefeller Sanitary Commission. Rose now applied on an international scale his approach to eradicating hookworm domestically, and after a world tour in 1915, he expanded the mandate beyond hookworm to include malaria, tuberculosis, and yellow fever. Doesn't this sound like a bunch of great guys? Just as the hookworm eradication campaign in the United States had served as a vehicle for creating a public health network, okay, see, a vehicle to create, just like Warburg said in the 1950 Senate hearings, okay, what we need is a mechanism, okay, a vehicle mechanism, same thing. Um, Work was also served larger goals. To Rose, the byproducts of the work were even more important than the control of a particular disease, as he explained, by showing that it was possible to clean up in a limited area and an object lesson is given. The object lesson was intended not only to change individual behavior, but to change the practices of entire governments. Okay, and what we have today is a super heavy dose of social engineering. That's what the internet's about. A lot of it, anyways. Excuse me. In his first 10 years, the Rockefeller Foundation became known more for its health work than any other initiative. Rockefeller Secretary Edwin Embry described it as the outstanding feature of the whole foundation program to date. He credited its success to Rose's rigidly defined approach, which yielded measurable results in decreasing sickness and death rates. The IHD established a simple, consistent methodology, even as it mounted extensive and far-flung campaigns. Its fundamental techniques became those of the foundation as a whole. One, to work with established government authorities. Two, to tackle problems that were solvable. Three, to use convincing demonstrations and means of persuading governments and other institutions to take the helm in the long run. Okay, so the Rockefeller Foundation, they go find the problem. It's problem, reaction, solution, okay? And in the long run, the government and other institutions take the helm, okay? Same thing with climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it. Same thing with the renewable energy programs, okay? This is all started as a problem, not a real problem, but a problem. And then when they're all done, it's the government and other institutions that put it into play over the long haul. The government doesn't have a clue what they're doing, right? Do you think anybody in this country or in the United States or in Britain knows anything about, a government official knows anything about energy? Not a chance, okay? It's all influenced. And where's the influence come from? Well, we'll get to that here shortly. Building institutions. The IHD public health campaign revealed related needs, finding that public health work required specialized training that almost no one had. The Rockefeller Foundation began to create an institutional infrastructure for that training. It established the nation's first school of hygiene and public health at Johns Hopkins University in 1918 and went on to establish other such schools throughout the U.S., Canada, Europe, and South America throughout the 20s. Like public health training, medical education was not very well developed in the U.S. when the Rockefeller Foundation began its work. Medical schools were mostly for-profit enterprises without academic grounding or research facilities. The Rockefeller support emphasized full-time professionalships within universities and encouraged training in both basic science and clinical subjects. Through the General Education Board, it supported most of the nation's leading medical schools between 1913 and 29 and helped to pioneer the more modern university-based research and teaching hospitals. As its commitment to medical education solidified, the Rockefeller Foundation created the Division of Medical Education in 1919, headed by Richard Pierce, with the aim of aiding medical schools throughout the world. A major endeavor in medical education was the establishment of the China Medical Board in 1914. The foundation's selection of China as a good location for introducing Western medical practices reflected the lingering influence of Gates and Rockefeller's ties to Baptist missionary endeavors. The CMB enterprise, however, became massive in its own right. After an intensive survey of existing institutions, the CMB decided to build a Johns Hopkins in China. It opened in 1917, and received significant funding. Now, this is the same Rockefeller group who thought that Mao, who's reported to kill between 40 and 60 million of his own people, Rockefeller thought that was a good thing. And some writings say that he thought they could have, got rid of more people. Which brings me to, real quick, again, if you haven't watched it, go to CanadianTruths.wordpress.com and punch in on the search engine, Survival of Spaceship Earth. Okay, because near the very beginning of that film, which is from 1972, you have Rockefeller talking about population. This is what it's all about. Control the population to decide what is a sustainable population and then deal with it. Okay, international trade in men and ideas, partly as a response to the devastation of World War I, the Rockefeller Foundation saw itself as tiding over a crisis in the medical sciences. For a continent whose institutional infrastructure had been decimated, the Foundation had established significant relationships in Europe during the war, especially through its large-scale campaign against tuberculosis in France. Now it extended those relationships to support individuals in the sciences. In 1923, it created the International Education Board and moved Rose over from the IHD to direct this new entity, which was dedicated to promoting education on an international scale. The main idea guiding the IEB was that scientific research, by its very nature, was an international concern. The connections needed to foster development of scientific research had largely been broken by the war, and the IEB sought to repair them. So you start a war, you devastate Europe, and then you slide right back in there with the cash to influence. Rose developed a hands-on approach, visiting leading scientists, identifying the most inspiring and productive ones, and hiring them to teach the most promising young students who would, in turn, be supported by Rockefeller funds. All of the individuals Rose identified were recommended through an extensive network of contacts that Rose constantly nurtured. Rose's IEB fellowship program would later serve as the model for the Foundation's support of the sciences in Europe throughout the 1930s under Warren Weaver's Natural Sciences program. The fellowship approach remained central to the Foundation for well over half a century, existing in various forms and ending only in the late 90s. Okay, so, they gathered up the promising young students who would in turn be supported by Rockefeller funds. Okay, and that is a huge problem because it's been going on for generations. Okay, in other words, they basically set up the science programs. Okay, these are the same science programs that brought you climate change. Same science that brought you the vaccines. Same science that brought you the pharmaceuticals. Okay, and that's who gets funded. In addition to training individuals, the IEB built key institutions in the sciences throughout Europe, from university departments to independent research centers. Much as he emphasized that the most talented scientists promised the best return on investments, so too did Rose aim to help the strongest of European institutions become stronger. Rose called his strategy making the peaks higher, the belief that creating a few centers of excellence was more effective in his campaign against human ignorance than spreading aid thin, risking mediocrity and falling short of real innovation. Okay, so this is a control of education and science and health. Social knowledge. In addition to the dual emphasis on public health and medical education, the idea of promoting the well-being of mankind called for some attention to the social aspects of human problems. Yet the Rockefeller Foundation had its hands full with the scope of the two commitments it had already established. A solution came in 1917 when the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Memorial was established by John D. Rockefeller Sr. and named for his late wife, in order to continue her interest in social welfare. In 1923, Beardsley Rumley was appointed director and led the LSRM into emerging and rapidly developing social sciences. It only lasted until 1928, but laid important groundwork for Rockefeller interests in economics, foreign policy, urban affairs, and cross-cultural understanding. Rumley devised a program of disinterested inquiry into the pressing problems of the day. His program echoed the Rockefeller Foundation precept in the hard sciences that increasing knowledge would naturally lead to solutions. As he put it, social knowledge is not a substitute for social righteousness, but knowledge is far greater aid to the righteousness than is ignorance. To those ends, the LSRM largely worked to build the institutional infrastructure for the social sciences. It supported university departments of economics, sociology, anthropology, and funded the work of non-governmental agencies such as the National Bureau of Economic Research. One of his lasting contributions was underwriting the establishment of the Social Science Research Council. Okay, the influence is huge. Okay, you got people out scoping or vetting who they're going to fund. What scientists are going to fund, what teachers are going to fund, what medical people they're going to fund. Or as George Carlin said, it's a big club. You and I aren't in a big club. Same club they use all day to beat you over the head, tell you where to go, what to do, what to think. It's time we picked up a club. We don't even need a big club. There's so many of us. We just need a bunch of little clubs. Anyways, evolution of the foundation. By the 1920s, there were 4 Rockefeller boards in active operation: the Rockefeller Foundation, the GEB, the International Education Board, and the LRSM. Many of the trustees overlapped, and the priorities of the various boards were often in conflict with each other. Furthermore, the first-generation leadership, including Gates, Wallace Buttrick, Rose, Abraham Flexner, and George Vincent, was nearing retirement. It was time for a recalibration of the foundation. The first generation had brought the Rockefeller Foundation to prominence, but these early leaders were not trained philanthropic administrators. In fact, they largely had to invent their profession as they lived it. Their reformist zeal had helped shape the foundation, but the increasingly complex and technical task of administrative maintenance had grown beyond them. Many of them complained about the rote tasks that now consumed their days, and the lack of time for reading, inquiry, and investigation. Beginning in 1925, the Rockefeller President Vincent solicited input from senior officers on how to reorganize. The trustees formed their own committee for review. Raymond Fosdick chaired the committee and formulated a plan to carry the Rockefeller Foundation forward. The Fosdick plan, approved in late 1928 and taking effect in January 29, eliminated or absorbed the other boards and centralized control. It also marked a turn toward the targeted support of research along selected lines, often through smaller grants. After 1928, the Rockefeller Foundation emphasis would be on basic research than larger lump sums of building or endowments. So, from 1913 basically to 1929, the Rockefeller Foundation, along with the other foundations, but this one in particular, control banking, control health, control education, control the sciences, control the social attitudes, is what these guys are up to. And so they, but I never was taught this stuff in school, not a chance. Now, I think I'm going to pop down here. We got a half an hour more or less. I'm going to jump down to 1963, 1988, the ecological web of giving. That sounds interesting. I'm going to see what they got to say here. Okay, so an ecological web of giving, reorganizing for changing times. As the Rockefeller Foundation marked its 50th anniversary, President J. George Harrer instituted the most significant shift in program organization the foundation had experienced since 28. The 1963 reorganization transformed the foundation structure from an academic model of divisions similar to university departments into a goal-oriented programs in which each component was related to every other in an ecological pattern. Sounds like sustainable development, doesn't it, folks? The Foundation's new agenda laid out 5 interdisciplinary endeavors. 1, toward the conquest of hunger. 2, the population problem. 3, strengthening emerging centers of learning. 4, toward equal opportunity for all. That kind of sounds like United Nations human rights, doesn't it? Although that did come from France. But then Rockefeller was big in France too. And number 5, aiding our cultural development. Harrer claimed that these new programs were not a radical departure from the patterns of the past, but rather the sublimated product of program evolution set in contemporary context and projected into the future. But they did, in fact, constitute a radical conceptual shift. The new programs addressed themes that had long been important to the Foundation, but they changed the Foundation's approach to both defining problems and seeking solutions. Discussing these changes several years later, the Rockefeller staff noted, the Rockefeller Foundation had a long history of supporting science and scholarship for their own sakes. Now it opted for application of already existing knowledge towards the well-being of mankind throughout the world. In short, the Rockefeller Foundation moved from the library and the laboratory into the fields and the streets. Although in general, the Foundation began to move away from promoting knowledge for its own sake, one key place in which it continued that work was in the newly acquired Bellagio Center on Lake Como in Italy. Now, from the 1960s onward, Bellagio has hosted Rockefeller-led collaborative meetings, independent gatherings, and provided space and time for renowned individuals to accomplish creative work. Now, there's a big movement out there now called the Ubuntu movement. Okay, you say Ubuntu or Ubuntu movement. Okay, and that comes right out of Bellagio. It's a publishing network, but it was. I'm going to put this in. If you know anybody out there that's pumping that movement, send them this, please. They think all of these things. You have these Umbuta taxis and that running around. People think this stuff just somehow appears. This global movement, Idle No More and Occupy and all of these movements just mysteriously appear. Okay? That movement came directly from the Rockefeller Foundation. So you got the people who are in Occupy supporting this Ubuntu movement. Okay, Occupy wants to get rid of the corporations, and they got it through their six skulls. Everything that they think is a grassroots movement is coming from the very corporations that these people want to get rid of. They got to get that through their heads. And it really ticks me off that there's so many people on the internet punching this stuff out. And I would think that the most of them that are running these sites and that and pumping out these videos and that know exactly what they're doing, and they're probably funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, because just the way it is. Let me go here. Where was I? By the 60s, the foundation had turned its focus away from Europe, which it now considered sufficiently strong to stand on its own, and toward new and developing nations throughout Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Applied work was necessary in these regions because they lacked the institutional infrastructure, governmental systems, and academic training prevalent in the U.S. and Western Europe. Furthermore, the Rockefeller Foundation was mounting more ambitious plans than the disease eradication programs, virus research, or medical training it had done previously in these regions. It was now looking to close the gap between developed and developing economies. Does that just sound like Agenda 21 or what? Of course it does. The Gospel of Ecology. That Hare described the new program as an ecological pattern. It's typical of this era. By the early 60s, the rhetoric of ecology had extended beyond the environmental movement. Its concepts became commonplace in academic disciplines and even in popular culture. The ecological viewpoint, broadly put, cast social problems as a complex web-like systems in which everything was connected to everything else. In the earlier part of the century, taking care of the environment and effective stewardship, not studying interrelationships. Ecology encouraged systems thinking across the board and unseated the progressive era attitudes that had shaped the Rockefeller Foundation from the beginning, including the older principles of practical management and the benevolent stewardship. The foundation's under fire. Hare was the ideal candidate to shepherd this transition. A deeply respected leader stepped in the Rockefeller ethos. He remains the only Rockefeller president who has ever risen through the organization's rank from a modest beginning as a field staffer. He assumed the presidency of the foundation against a backdrop that included the cultural and social upheavals of America in the 1960s and the controversial tax reform of '69. The legislation required increased public accountability from tax-exempt foundations as well as significant payout of funds each year. While the new regulations created difficulties for other foundations, Rockefeller had met most of the requirements of the new law for years. Nor had the Rockefeller Foundation engaged in the use of funds for political purposes that parts of the law were meant to crack down. Probably the real damage the legislation did was to staff morale, as extensive congressional hearings assailed public confidence in these institutions, and foundations felt compelled to defend their activities in public. Okay, so that would be down. That was probably the Reese Commission they're talking about, looking into these foundations. Let's see what we got here. In the 1970s, witnessed crisis of public faith from the Vietnam War to Watergate scandal of foundering economy, environmental degradation, persistent global conflict, crime, poverty, urban decay, and racial inequity seemed intractable. Compounding matters, after the 1969 congressional hearings, foundations were criticized in the press from every direction that were accused of being passive and conservative as well as profligate and partisan. When John Knowles, physician and former head of Massachusetts General Hospital, assumed the Rockefeller presidency in 1972, the ideals that had guided the foundation for most of its history failed to offer the assurance they once had. Scientific research no longer promised inevitable progress. Knowles referred to a massive scientific and technological machine run wild and dismissed quantitative methods as numeracy and computerized cost-benefit analysis. Here is a return to the humanities and answers that would emanate from head, heart, and institution. Let's see. But anyways, I'm going to just, we're down to the end of this thing. The whole thing is about control. You know, every single town and city hall basically on the planet is doing the bidding of these foundations. Who set up the United Nations? These foundations set up the United Nations. Okay? For control. The bankers set it up. The foundations set it up. I'm sure the royalty, well, I know they're involved in it, the so-called royalty. So, everything in our lives is control. There's an old saying, you know, um, if you control the food supply, you control the people. And I don't know if Kathy Hamilton's listening tonight, but I haven't got time to look this up right now. But when I put in, you know, about control, when I Googled that, you know, we actually Kathy found that video, Survival of Spaceship Earth, and Marshall McLuhan apparently said there are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew. Okay, so this goes back a long time. Control the oil and you control the nations. Control the food and you control the people. It's all about control. Now, an interesting thing, I mean, we were talking about barcodes on Tuesday. Now, I made a point of remembering this guy, Aaron Russo, befriended, I think it was Nick Rockefeller, I think it was, and in a conversation asked Rockefeller, what is it you guys are up to? Like, what is it you want? Well, the plan is we'll just chip everybody, and then if they don't do as we want or they don't submit, we just turn off their chip and they're screwed. And that's what this is all about. Total and complete control. Now you're paying taxes. Okay, you're paying property taxes, and property is just a bundle of rights. It's actually a fiction. It doesn't really exist. But you're paying taxes on your property, and even if you're renting, you're paying property taxes built into your rent. So we're all paying for the paychecks for all of those who work and the councils of your town and city halls. And those town and city halls are implementing a global agenda in your own backyard, which the outcome is to barcode you or chip you, but definitely take total control, okay, on how much food you get, what kind of food you get, how much water you get, and you're paying these guys. I mean, this is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Now, one thing I found today, I didn't have much time to do much research, so I do want to thank the Rockefeller Foundation for making this show extremely easy for me tonight. But when I was rooting around there, it turns out, according to what I've come across, the first actual grocery store didn't appear till 1946. Okay, up until that time, you had farmer markets, you had butcher stores, you had bakeries. Okay, these are all independent outfits, and it wasn't until 1946, apparently, and in California of all places, the same place they signed America onto the United Nations, or signed everybody onto the United Nations, or the original founders of the United Nations signed on in California. And people wonder why California is such a weird state. You know, people are constantly saying that California is just a bunch of freaking left-wing communists. Well, yeah, look what comes out of California. But anyways, so, the first grocery store in America didn't appear till supposedly 1946 in California. And it's all about control. Because again, if you control the food, you control the people. Now, what a great opportunity to mess with people's foods. Okay? We set up the grocery stores. We control the grocery stores. We control the food. We inject garbage into the food. We concoct our scientists that we hire and search out and influence through the universities. Those ones that are chosen, those ones that are vetted who obviously have no moral compass, are the ones that would work at places like Monsanto, for instance. Okay. And what's the big problem that the Rockefeller Foundation moved towards? Population. Okay. And again, in that spaceship, survival of spaceship Earth, that's right near the start. It's all about population. So what a great opportunity. We control the scientists, we control the universities, we control the healthcare, or at least we influence it to a great degree. We influence government. And what a great system we've got set up. So we can poison the food, and the media doesn't say nothing about it. The media just doesn't say anything about anything. Nothing important anyways. None of this stuff would come up in an election. And that really bothers me because, these elections are as fraudulent as can be, and people get all worked up about it. Did you hear what so-and-so said about so-and-so? Well, I ain't voting for that idiot now. This is the kind of thing. I mean, there's nothing of any importance in an election. Vote for me, I'm red. Vote for me, I'm blue. Vote for me, I'm green. Vote for me, I'm orange. Like, what have we been reduced to? Children. That's what we've been reduced to. And so now, because population's the problem and ecology's the problem, and we use social sciences and the social internet to further influence people into the way they think, the way they act, and it's all controlled. So I'm kind of really happy that UCY.TV exists, because as a mainstream radio station said to me one time several years back, there's no effing way you're ever getting on the radio. And he meant it. Another radio station I was supposed to be on, it didn't happen. And when I asked why it didn't happen, the gentleman said, well, you know why not, Ron? And I go, I know, but I like to hear it. And he said, you know too much. You know way too much. Okay, we'll never be able to hang on to you. Okay, because radio and media is a very carefully thought out balancing act. Okay, and that's what it is. It makes me want to throw up. Is what it does every time I think of mainstream media. And I know some people in mainstream media, and for all intents and purposes, just like the doctor jamming a vaccination into you for the 400th time into your little 2-year-old child, probably is a decent guy to go have dinner with, or lady to go have dinner with, or go for a walk in the park or something. They don't even know what the hell they're doing, because they were brought up through these universities and they were taught things, and they were told these things are normal, and that it's all about your benefit. And I'm sure they weren't taught the influence that was brought to bear upon the universities and that. I was looking at a thing about Rockefeller there last week or so, and, our Prime Minister, Mackenzie King, worked for the Rockefeller Foundation, for crying out loud. And talk about influence. This is when King George was the King of England. And so they wanted to put an expansion on the Oxford University Library or something. And they needed £4 million or whatnot. And they didn't have it. So who shows up? Rockefeller. He puts up 3/4 of the money and tell them they raise the rest of it. They can raise 25%, he'll put up 75%, and then it was opened by King George himself. This is the kind of influence these foundations have. Okay, so when we're bitching and complaining about our politicians or our media or this or that, we have to understand where all this control came from. I don't know who's calling. I got a call coming, and I got like about 4 or 5 minutes left. I don't have time to take a call right now, so I apologize for whoever's calling here. But we call in on Sunday. We do a 2-hour show on Sunday, so lots of time for discussion then. Anyways, that's just a short preview of the Rockefeller Foundation, which very, very few people know anything about. Okay, because it's never mentioned in the newspapers, it's never mentioned on the media, it's not mentioned on talk shows. I don't mean this talk show, but I mean on mainstream talk shows. You hear about the latest diet, or you hear about whatever you hear about on mainstream media. Just throw the damn stuff out the window, please. It's much more interesting if you can get yourself, just pick a subject and then go research it, okay? But always you can, one of the best places to start is the Rockefeller Foundation, because they've been at it for so long, okay? I mean, how bad is this? 1913, the Fed gets founded. 1913, we get the Rockefeller Foundation. So we got the bankers building all this stuff, the bankers funding all this stuff for influence. You think your politicians are independent? You think your school boards are independent? You think your healthcare is independent? It's all global, and it's all being controlled out of what they set up, and it's called the United Nations. I mean, for crying out loud, Rockefeller donated the land for the United Nations, and that came in with great applause. Oh, what a wonderful man. Look at that. He's donating this for the United Nations so we can have world peace. What a load of bunk. Absolute load of bunk. But this is what our lives have been. And we just got to keep shining that light on these guys. I don't know how what's Rockefeller now, 100 or something? So anyways, that's the show for tonight, really. Again, I want to thank Jules at UCY.tv. And I want to thank the listeners. I especially want to thank the people in the chat. There is a chat if you're listening. And you can, just pop in and join in the conversation. I don't think anybody in that chat bites. I don't think they do. They seem like pretty darn decent people who care. They care about their families. They care about their communities. Not like the Rockefeller Foundation, who cares about influence and control. So we do have to get control back, and the only place we're going to do it is at the local level, because that's where all this nonsense is being implemented, is at the local level. Send your mayor this show. Send the school board to show. I mean, these people think, a lot of these people, people don't think they're evil. They don't think they're doing something evil. They think they're, working for wonderful causes. Well, those are made up causes, and they're controlled causes, and they're damn dangerous causes, because that's just what these guys are up to. So anyways, that's the show for tonight. God willing, I'll be here Sunday. And again, I want to thank everybody. Everybody be good, take care, and
selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line, lower classes, social slime. They don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they war.